All right, so we are recording now. So, thank you so much for joining the first episode of the School Brief. Today, I'm joined by 3 school leaders from 3 international schools in Singapore, who will meet in just a second. We're here to help parents understand and answer 3 very important questions. Why early years matters, what really differs from school to school, and how to tell which approach may be right for your child. We'll also leave time for parent questions, so please do add yours in the comments, and we'll do our best to respond in the chat or bring them into the conversation at the end. So let's meet our speakers now. Jane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jane Nadaraju. I'm the founder of Melbourne International School. I have been an educator for more than 30 years, and I'm also a social entrepreneur. I run the Gill International College as well as Hay Schools Singapore. I'm a big advocate for inclusive education and providing children with the different pathways that they need to thrive in a school environment.
Wonderful, thank you. Monica, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you so much, Ryan. Hello, everybody. I'm Monica. I work at Nexus International School, Singapore. I am a kindergarten teacher here, so I work with children who are around 5 years old, and I am also the early years lead. We have 3 nursery classes and 4 kindy classes. I am now coming up to my 10th year here in Singapore. So Nexus is my 3rd international school. It's been a truly wonderful experience, as you can see by the number of years that I've been here. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you for sharing. And Luna, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, my name's Luna Della. I'm Deputy Head of Primary at Dover International School. I look after our NEST programme, which is for our youngest learners aged 3 to 7. I've been teaching for, I think, 21 years now. And yes, love being here in Singapore and here at Dover Court.
Fantastic. Well, we have a lot to cover and only 45 minutes to do it. So let's dive in. I thought we could start from the beginning, where many parents start, and understanding what early years really is, and is it necessary? As a parent of 3 myself, I wondered that once upon a time if it was necessary, and I remember struggling with it. But all 3 of my children were born in Asia, and all 3 attended early years, but each experienced or are experiencing it in different ways. So maybe we can just start with defining what is early years. Luna, would you like to start us off?
Sure. So, I mean, for me, early years is when or where children can learn to be at school, learn what school is, and learn how to learn in that school. Essentially, you're asking children to develop their social management skills and their communication social skills through play and through exploration, and also through carefully, intentionally designed activities and engagements to really help them to embed those early foundational aspects of learning, so early reading and maths and early English. But the most important part is that this is a time when we can help children to learn to feel safe and secure in a school so that they can continue to thrive in their learning.
Awesome, thank you. That kind of puts things into perspective. So Monica, I'm curious, what in your experience do parents most often misunderstand about early years?
Well, I think one of the most common misunderstandings that we come across is that early years should look a little bit like primary, especially when early years is attached to a primary school, as is often the case. And I think that's quite natural for parents to think and feel that way, because they're thinking about those next steps and what school will look like as children progress. But I think at the same time, it's really important to understand the role of play and how that fosters children's foundations in those early years so that they can have, as Luna said, the social skills, the communication skills to then be able to access that curriculum later on. Now, when we say the role of play, it's something that we often talk about as educators, and what that is such a simple word, but there's so much behind play, and we must understand that that's children's first language of learning. That is how children learn to navigate the world, to understand what's around them. And that could be a whole never hour-long webinar, so I will not go on about it too long. But I think I can't stress enough the skills that children are taking away from play. And on that note, I must also talk about the role of the educator, because in that play, we are not just observing children and thinking, oh, how wonderful, they're playing so nicely. We are also being there to support and scaffold by questioning, by observing their thinking and thinking about where to next and how will we further on into that line of inquiry. So we can't detach the two, and that's where we find the beauty of an early years setting.
Really well said. Yeah, I think it's about the building blocks, right? And this is where it all begins. So then, if this is kind of like the foundation, Jane, what actually happens in early years that just can't be replicated later on in a child's life?
I think it's more so the experiences, the memories. I think when you look back, childhood is about all your fun memories, your favorite teacher, your best friend, the activities that you did, your school play, and the list goes on, right? I think it's about the connections that you make, and the connections that give you the confidence to be part of the bigger world. I do like what Monica said about, when you're part of a big school, then the focus is about being at school, uh, being in a safe, nurturing environment. And I think that's very important when you're looking at a preschool. I think the focus, I think there's a lot of anxiety, especially in this part of the world, about primary education. But I think, in our work, we always remind our parents to say, think about now, think about how connection is important. Let's not worry about all the corrections about, what we need to learn for primary, because that will come. But, make sure that they are feeling happy, they're safe, and they just enjoy being themselves.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that gives us a strong starting point, and it helps. I think most of the families that are watching this are probably already pretty confident that they want to send their child to an early years program. But now we have a baseline. Let's move now into what many parents find a bit harder to decode, and that is what actually makes schools different. So as somebody that's visited, over 100 schools, I know many schools can look quite similar, especially in early years. The websites sound similar. The classrooms can look all warm and nice. But let's get under the hood a little bit. So let's unpack what it means, what these words mean, and what parents should look for. So starting in a school visit scenario, Monica, when parents visit an early years setting, what are the first things they should pay attention to if they want to really understand the approach properly, not just whether the environment looks nice?
Thanks, Ryan. I really love this question because I am such a big advocate for, if parents can visit the school, that they should, because I honestly think that is the best way to get a feeling of whether it's the right place for you or not. So thank you for the question. Now, I guess there are two parts to this question. There's the part where, are you visiting whilst the learning is happening and you're lucky enough to be in a school where it's all taking place and you can see the children doing what they do best? Or are you visiting the school during an open day where actually you can see the environment, you can meet the educators, but you're not seeing the learning necessarily happen. So if you don't mind, I'll just break it up into those two different scenarios. Now, if you are there and you can take a little glimpse into the children in their learning space, the best and most wonderful experience will be actually listening into the conversations of the learners. And the interactions that they are having with the educators around them, that will tell you 1,000 things, and you'll be able to walk away with an intuition of whether that's the early years setting that aligns to your personal values as a family. If you are visiting during an open day or during a moment where you're not seeing the learning in action, you would be best placed, I think, to look at the threads of learning. So what are the little pieces that have been left behind? And I don't necessarily mean what's beautifully put up on the classroom walls. I mean those little glimpses of, are you seeing projects that have not been finished? That would tell you a lot. It would tell you that the educators in that early year setting really value the process and take time to nurture skills in the children that help them build through a project. Are you seeing engagement with communities? So, for example, if you were to walk into my classroom right now, you would see an array of postcards. We are currently looking at a central idea that's all about journeys and how journeys help us explore the world. And we engaged families by saying, oh, if you have relatives abroad, send a postcard into our school. And so we've received a beautiful, beautiful selection of postcards from all across the world. And that's where that documentation is really powerful, because it's not there just for adult eyes, but it's there for our learners so that they can actually see, and keep coming back and see, oh, look, I've noticed that there's a stamp on this postcard, or notice different features of them, so they can keep returning back to it. So just a little example of the sort of threads that you might be looking out for as you're visiting around. And of course, in those scenarios, always, if you can speak to the educators that work there, then please do speak to them, and really think carefully about the sort of questions you might ask them. So I would definitely recommend taking a little bit of time to think, what is important to you, and what sort of questions would you like to have in your back pocket to ask, because that will show you a lot as well.
Awesome answer. Yeah. So I think you touched on something here that I think is gonna come up frequently, and that is the teachers, right? So the teachers are really important in this, and I think, I want to know what Jane thinks here about what tends to reveal the philosophy of an early year setting most quickly. Is it the space, or the teachers, maybe like Monica mentioned there, the rhythm of the day, or is it something else? What are your thoughts?
I think one of the main things that resonates with me, and having been an educator for such a long time, is flexibility. I think Monica said about looking at the artwork, looking at the unfinished projects. I started my first preschool for my children some 30 years ago, and I remember, especially with the second child, my daughter was very good in giving a lot of feedback. And if you asked her what was, how was your day at school, or what's the favorite thing that you liked, she would say, I liked teacher so and so. So people were important. But very interestingly, I would ask her, why do you like this teacher? And it would be a very simple answer: her hair is soft. And I'd go, what kind of answer is that? And then I realized she was just a very tactile child. She liked to snuggle up next to a teacher. She'd be holding on to her hair, and but very sensory seeking in some scenarios that someone would analyze it. But the teacher was very kind and warm and welcoming. So, you know, um, look out for teachers who provide accommodations. When you walk through a school, you can see the adaptations that have taken place. Is not one size fits all anymore. Every child is to be seen, is to be celebrated. And I think when you go through preschools, that's what you're looking out for.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I think that's so important for our children to feel comfortable in the school. Yeah. So, Luna, what do you think parents often miss on a school visit because they're paying attention to the wrong things?
I don't know if there's a wrong thing, but I would say that it's much easier, isn't it, when you're looking at, there's so many schools here in Singapore, there's so many lovely buildings and amazing facilities and things. It's easy to, I guess, to do a tour looking with your eyes and look at the things that you can easily see with your eyes. So the swimming pool or the display board, or how advanced the children seem to be in their learning. But I would say it's really important to consciously try and look through feeling instead. How do the children feel? How does it feel to be a child in this environment? Is everybody purposeful and calm? As Monica said, those interactions between adults and children, but between children themselves as well. Does it feel like the children really love being there? Are they engaged? Are they feeling secure? You can tell a lot from those conversations, and you can also tell a lot from that body language between people. Something that, again, sorry to come back to you, Monica, something that you mentioned earlier was about how people sometimes expect an early years environment to mirror a primary school environment. And sometimes that can be quite confronting for a parent when you're looking at these all through schools. But I would say that maybe it should be the other way around. If you're going to be doing a tour and you're considering a school for a longer period of time, does the primary school reflect the philosophy, the feel, the kind of the sense of purpose and play and agency that we have in an early year setting? So that when they leave the early years and go into the primary school, it's not going to be a massive change and values haven't changed. Make sure that you've got a really good sense of that nurture that we always try to put into an early years environment all the way through the school.
So that's an interesting point too, because a lot of parents do think about what comes next, and they actually, I've had parents come to me and they're like wanting to figure out where their child's going to go to university before they've entered early years. So I wonder if we could just talk about, like, maybe Monica, you could answer this question. How much should parents really care about curriculum? Is it really that important, or is the lived experience in the classroom more important?
I think this is one thing that is front and foremost for a lot of parents when they first start thinking about school. There's two sides to it. One is, yes, it's important if you're thinking about your transitions into different countries and what that would look like. Having said that, especially in the early years, many of the frameworks and the curriculums share very similar foundations. In the early years, I've not come across a single curriculum document that doesn't talk about play, or doesn't talk about the importance of relationships. And it might be different terminology that's used, being and belonging, or fostering security. But you will find similar pillars within them. I completely understand that from a parent's perspective, if you're new to coming into the world of curriculum, it can feel like a Pandora's box, frankly. But I think whilst curriculum is important, and it's a good starting point to sort of get a glimpse into what framework is the school using, it can only be a starting point. And then we go back to all the other things that we were just talking about and sharing about, really understanding what is the culture of the school, how the learning is taking place, because ultimately we talk about curriculum and it's a written curriculum or it's a framework. It's how does each and every school then put that in action, and what is the consistency in the school with using that curriculum as well. So whilst it's not an easy answer to swallow, because it means a little bit of hard work and homework on the back of it, but I think it's the most honest answer, because really you can have two schools that follow exactly the same curriculum, but in practice it could be completely different. So I hope I haven't broken too many hearts with that.
No, that is a really tough one to answer. So yeah, well done. I think that, you know, we can maybe look into a little bit more though. Like, I wonder, like, Luna, in your view, like, when do you think the framework or the curriculum, when do you think parents risk over focusing on that label? Like, at what stage does it become like, you know, you're putting too much weight on the curriculum or the framework?
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of what Monica just said. For a parent of a 3-4-year-old child, early years children, really there's not going to be much difference between your PYP or EYFS, IPC, all of these different frameworks that you hear about. And there's so much jargon here. None of that is going to make a massive amount of difference to an early years parent. As the children go older into primary school, and particularly into secondary school, when we're looking at exam frameworks, that's where you have a fundamental difference between very exam heavy, content focused structures or more inquiry led structures. That's at age 16 to 18. Until a child is well into primary school, the difference will be at that primary level, whether or not you have more of a focus on inquiry or more of a focus on more traditional content-based learning. I would say the majority of international schools now are looking much more at inquiry and are looking much more at bringing that play that has always existed within any kind of early years framework much more into the primary curriculum. So there is a commonality still in lots and lots of primary schools, especially in the international sector, I would say.
Okay, so safe to say that parents shouldn't put too much focus on curriculum or framework then in early years, right?
Yeah. Can I just add to that? I think what is probably really difficult, as Monica said, there's so much to kind of penetrate here to understand. There's lots and lots of information and lots of different words and systems. It is probably advisable when you're looking for a school to think about not so much the curriculum or the framework, but what it's benchmarked against. So it is really validating and important to know that your child is learning at a level that is acceptable somewhere, at a level that is kind of either standardized or is similar to a child in a different school, so that you absolutely know that we haven't forgotten anything within the curriculum. That is something that is important in early years also, and in primary school and in secondary school. But which curriculum that is, or which framework that is much less relevant. It's just important that there is some level of verification behind it, so that you know that it's robust.
I see. Okay, so then, like, if we're focusing on, you know, what what's the child's experience? Jane, I wonder if you could touch on this. Like if two schools use a similar language on their website, like what usually ends up feeling a bit different in practice for the child, in your opinion?
I think it's a lot of the intangible outcomes, where self-help skills, social thinking, perspective taking, when you're going from a very small, intimate setting to being in a bigger classroom, or perhaps, sharing the space with a few more classes. I think those skills are very important. It does not come out in very specific curriculum materials or artwork or project works, but it is something that is learned through experiences, schools that create these opportunities. I think that's very important. So I think understanding the profile of learner is key. So I think that's the first step. The advice that we always give our parents is that there are so many great schools in Singapore, but know your child, and what does your child need more, and what does he need less, and what does he not need at all. And because schools can make accommodations, but at the end of the day, I think you know your child best, and you want to make sure that they have a strong start. And remembering, early years, you don't necessarily have to go to school. You're going there to socialize, you're going there to be with other kids, and I think that is key, and that is priority. So looking for that in the schools, knowing what your child needs, I think is kind of a win-win. Being I think we're all teachers, and we know that sometimes we want to help every child, right? We want to support every child in every class that we teach, but there are limitations because you have that number of students in every school and every classroom. So I think knowing your child and knowing what suits them and what is it that they need at that time. I think I have a bit of a different view when it comes to starting in a big school too soon, just because I feel like you want to have the option to be able to match it. They grow so much and they grow so fast and they become individuals, and we see this now very common from our preschools, where they may have children in two different schools. I know it's a nightmare for parents, when you have two different calendars, and we wish that we were all operating under one calendar in Singapore, but we don't. But there are families who then make the bold decision to say, like, okay, maybe my child's going to be better off in an inquiry-based school, or more in a structured curriculum, and that's something we really applaud. It's a lot of work, but I think it's putting child first.
Yeah, and that's actually leads us perfectly into the next section of our talk, where we try to figure out what school or what framework is going to be a good fit for your child. I think that's the main question that a lot of parents want to know. So where are some of the real differences starting to show? Is it the curriculum? Is it the teachers? Is it in the child's opinion and what they enjoy? Let's see if we can figure that out. So, Monica, this question is for you. When parents are trying to understand what kind of early years environment may suit their child, what signs in their child would you encourage them to pay attention to first?
Well, as parents, you will know your child the best. You will have seen them in many different contexts, and you'll be able to understand whether they'll thrive in a busy, open environment that invites lots of collaboration, or whether they would need something a bit more smaller, somewhere a bit more quieter, somewhere where they feel very connected to maybe an individual or two. And you'll also know how much of a risk taker you want to be as a parent and for your children. Maybe you see that they are a little bit more introverted, and you think, actually, let's be risk takers here and go into something that invites a little bit more of an open collaborative space. So number one is really maybe taking a moment, taking a notebook out, or over dinner with your partner, having a real think about what, I think Jane was saying earlier, what are the attributes of our little being in front of us, the thing that you love the most and you want the best for, and ultimately all the choices out there are fabulous, aren't they? So it's choosing the right place for your little one. So in that sense, it's really, you will know all those things, but it's taking that moment to reflect and think, okay, so these are the attributes of our child. And whilst you won't know them in a learning context, because that will be different too, that's a good start. And then thinking, okay, so what would be the fit? And that's where the conversations with the schools as well would be really important, to be open and honest and say, look, this is what we're noticing at home, and what do you think about it? Is this the right place? Do we fit? Do our values align? And I think all educators out there having those conversations will really value to engage in that. What are the interests? What would we say are the moments that we celebrate within the children, and does that align to the physical space, the resources, the environment, the philosophy, the approach, all of that?
Yeah, it's, we're all here, we're all from different schools, but we're all here to make sure that parents and the children find the best fit school, right? That's because at the end of the day, if the child and the parents are happy, then the school is happy and everything goes much smoother. So I love that we're all here to accomplish that mission. But I wonder, like, Luna, are there any particular traits or behaviors that suggest a child may benefit from one approach to another, like a gentler start, or like Jane mentioned, flexibility, or what would you say there?
Yeah, so I would say if your child is very sensitive, or maybe finds change really challenging, or who you're worried about in terms of the transition, perhaps they don't separate from you as their parent very easily. I think those children, and there are lots of children, especially the little ones who would fall under that category, those children really often thrive in an environment where there is a lot of where there are really positive relationships with the adults, obviously, but where there is flexibility, where the school is able to meet their needs in a flexible way, where the school or the teacher is able to speak with you as the parents and to sound out, to really dialogue around what those needs are and to be able to accommodate. I think if your child has a really strong personality and your child is really, really confident, there's a really good chance that you're still going to need a school with teachers and staff in it who are able to talk things through with you and who are able to accommodate in other ways. So I would say arguably for all children, that is a very, very important thing, regardless of how your child is at this moment in time. Essentially, we're talking about very, very small children. And so it's really, really important that the school is able to look at each child as an individual and look at each family as an important member of the school community with whom an ongoing discussion is going to happen about how to support that child. So yeah, I think all children show signs of needing a level of flexibility, and really it's important for a parent to consider, is the school able to do that? Is the school able to take into account my feelings for what my child needs, and to take into account my child's own individuality? Some schools can't, but I think that's a really important question to be asking. Is it that my child needs to kind of fit with the school, or can the school fit with my child?
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, is there a perfect school, or is there just a school that's the best fit? Yeah. So on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, are there any signs that suggest a child may be ready for an environment with a bit more routine, a bit more challenge from the beginning? Jane, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, I think I second a lot what has been said. But one of the things that I do urge all parents to do is, once you've made a decision, you want to be very honest with the school. You want to share all information, because I think that gives everyone a very strong start. When we are informed, we can plan for that. And fact finding, or it's very hard, and it's very hard for the child. There's underlying anxiety that creeps in, and there's some other challenges that creep in, and it becomes very uncomfortable for everyone. So I think we strongly encourage parents to be very open and honest with all information, and once a decision is made, is to trust the process. Know that the school that you've chosen, there's also support for you as a family, and there's no judgment, that you feel that you can trust. See, in this part of the world, school becomes the extended family, right? We support many families who are away from their own families, and so within our schools we create little communities and support systems. And I think that is very important. So I think from everything that we've shared today, I think we're very unified when we say you must feel like you fit into that environment, and that you feel comfortable in that environment, and that your child will feel safe, and you feel safe, that you can actually share information on how it's going or how it's not going, and so that you can work towards a positive outcome for everyone. Every school wants the best for every child, but it's a process.
Yeah, it is a process. Would you say that there's a sign when parents should be able to tell, like, something's not quite right with the school, though? Um, Jane, do you want to answer that? I mean, like, do you feel like there's a time when a parent should be able to tell, like, oh, something's not working out at this school. I might have made a wrong decision.
Mm, I want to be neutral here. I'm a teacher, but I'm also a school business owner. I think that happens when there's a break in communication. The school is trying to communicate with safety. Most times when it's not working out is when safety is a concern for the child, but also for everyone, right? And I think the other, in another scenario, is perhaps being aware of class sizes. You may have chosen a school that has these ratios, but your child needs a more intimate setting, and it's not working out. And then you have to be very honest, and have that communication, have that discussion to say, now maybe we have to just pull back a little bit and try something different for a while, or some external support. I think all our schools offer excellent support after school, and which a great homeschool partnership sometimes supports the situation. So you don't necessarily have to change schools, but by having intervention, some strategies, implemented, I think you can work collaboratively with the schools. And then there's that worst case scenario that none of us want to happen, where you have to change school. So I think that's kind of what we all avoid, because leaving their friends and whatnot is just such a huge um, it has such a huge impact, right? So I think all of us would try our best to kind of work with the families, work with the experts. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something that's wrong with the child. Sometimes it's just changes, right? Illness, situations, helper going home, you have, a loss of a pet. None of this is to be taken very lightly. And, even when they are little, I think it has a huge impact in their emotional well-being.
Hmm. Luna or Monica, is there anything else that you would like to add there?
Specifically about when things break down between a family and a school.
Yeah.
I think that's why this part, the choosing the school part, is really important. I think, and we haven't really we've talked a lot about early years, and we've talked about environments and teachers and relationships. We haven't really talked about values, and it's much, much more likely that that relationship breakdown is never going to happen if your family values match the values of the school, importantly, but also if the school lives its values. So if you when you're doing that school visit, when you're walking around, the other thing that you're looking for is, they've said these things. We all have a mission and a vision and a values. Every school has got them up in posters and on the website. Can you see it? And does it vibe with me? You know, does it reflect my own values? If you do get a kind of a feeling in schools. There are some schools that feel quite casual and friendly, and then there are some schools that are very, very formal. And if that isn't part of the way that you work, then the chances of a relationship breakdown further down the track is much, much higher. So yeah, look at those values at the start, try and find an alignment, and really avoid ever getting to the position where you even need to be considering changing schools because of the breakdown of communication.
Wow, such good advice. Thank you. Yeah. Monica, is there anything else that you want to add, or did that pretty much cover the?
I think that pretty much covered it, but I would say that yes, those initial moments are so important, and sort of combining what Jane and Luna said, they're important. We're building that trust and that relationship. I think once the trust has been built, even within the transition of settling children in, if the parents are feeling calm and secure in the knowledge that they've made the right choice and that they have that full confidence in their educators, the cortisol levels drop down, they're feeling calm, and the children are also then feeling a lot calmer. And so those early days are before, and those early days at the start are so important. It's all about that relationship.
Awesome. Such good advice. Well, we did get a few questions in, and we have a little bit of time left to take one. I think we can take one or two here. So I'm just going to put them on screen now. So this one, if a parent is stuck between two strong schools and both seem good, what one piece of advice would you give them to help choose the right fit for their child? Whoa, that's a big one. Is anyone up for answering that question?
I can try.
Okay.
It's a very expensive process, so you might want to think about making the right decision. I think cost comes into play a lot in this part of the world, right? Private education is expensive, so you want to do your own financial planning even before you start the process.
Okay. Good advice. Yeah. Anybody want to add to that?
I get a sense that Monica and I are probably going to say a very similar thing to the thread of what we've been saying throughout, but go and visit, have those conversations, listen, have a look, and try and get a sense, like feel it. Try and experience it through the eyes of your small child as well, not just through your body as a grown-up, but what is your 4-year-old going to experience, and how does that feel to you?
And try to bring them along if you can. That would be another thing. If you have the opportunity to talk to any existing parents, and especially learners of the school, that would be the other potential that might help with that decision. Just having conversations with parents at the school, I think, would be really helpful as well.
Such good advice. I think that answers that question pretty well. We've got time for one more, maybe. Let's do this one. Okay. Wow. This one. I've tried 4 different schools, and my 4-year-old still cries at drop-off every day. Been there, and tells me he doesn't want to go back when I pick him up. What should I do next? Oh, that's a tough one as a parent. Anybody want to take that one and give some advice?
Well, maybe I'll jump in here because we naturally see tears when children are settling into school. That's it doesn't happen all the time, but it's very common for children to enter early years and cry and feel anxious and have that separation anxiety from their loved ones. And I just first and foremost want to say that's a completely normal part of the process. The importance is how are they being supported, and is there a trajectory over time where you're feeling that progress is being made, and it's not necessarily linear. It could be that you're having a bit of a roller coaster, but as long as you're feeling that they're starting to settle a little bit, then you know that you'll get there. If they're crying nonstop every day at drop off and pick up, that's okay initially. It's just seeing whether that continues on and on, or not. But it's giving time for that process and understanding that those tears are okay, and being in really close communication with the educators to know, it might be that you are really seeing the worst of it in that moment of separation, and actually 2 minutes later they are so busy and engaged that you'd never be able to tell that they were going through that. But having those conversations there are really important. Or it could be that actually no, they do settle, but then they do need a little bit of more support, or there are certain times and patterns. And so finding that out and working really closely with the school around what does that transition look like. I think, as Luna mentioned earlier, every single child is unique, and we appreciate that. So, what one child's transition looks like will be different to what another's looks like. But just knowing that is fairly natural. So going through that process there.
Yeah. Trust the process, right? Yeah.
Can I just add to that? I think probably if a small child has been to 4 different schools and they've cried and they have changed schools subsequently, there's a chance that it will take a bit longer. There's a chance that child associates crying at school to changing schools, and it can be quite a difficult, quite a traumatic experience changing schools for a child, because their whole day is spent with different people and different environments and different routines and different structures. So that perseverance for any child starting a school is really important, but particularly in this case, I think it probably might take a little bit longer. And so you might need that conversation, that dialogue with your class teacher. You might need that flexibility then. They might suggest something like maybe shortened days for a while, or perhaps it's when mum or dad is dropping them off that they find it harder. We can work together to try and find something, little tweaks to the system to support your child. As Monica said, they're an individual, and there's lots and lots of different ways that schools have got to kind of try it out and to try and support that transition.
Yeah.
I think I just like to add that working with the school and helping, empowering the children in understanding where they're going, their routines, giving them some predictability and control on what the day is going to look like, working on a social story even before starting school, empowering them with information of where they're going, who they're going to meet. I think that is very, very helpful before you restart the whole process of taking them there, kind of, helping them prepare for the environment. I think that would be very helpful too.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, I think that answers the question really well. And we are just about out of time, so I think we'll wrap this up. I really appreciate you, wonderful educators, joining me today on this talk, and thank you, parents, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this webinar, please let us know. If you have questions or you would like to get in touch with any of these schools, you can find their profile on doris.school, or I believe you can learn more about them in the notes or the comments below. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.